Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Planet X NASA Research. This is going to be our new YouTube channel, ladies and gentlemen. The Nibiru channel and the Planet X News channel, they will stay up on YouTube. Unfortunately, over the past couple of weeks, we've had this big push on censoring and silencing this information that we seek. Now, before I go into entirely too much related to this whole YouTube situation, we want to get into some very important information that myself and the doctor have been going into over the last couple of days. And it's involved quite a bit of research. And what we felt we had to do was go back in time, way back in time, as far as we can go back. Now, there is information pertaining to Percival Lowell. He was an astronomer. And we could have went back that far, engaging in some of his work. But I just wanted to go back as far as Dr. Robert Harrington, Chief Naval Observatory Astronomer, and Zachariah Sitchin, and NASA, the boys in blue. And we wanted to go back, and we wanted to find out what they were doing, when they were doing it, and why. What were they doing back in the late 1970s, the early 80s, and the early 90s pertaining to our subject matter of Planet X research? Good evening, Doctor. How are you?
Good evening, Scott. I'm very well, thank you. And how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the doctor has gone into, well, extensive research, digging and trying to formulate a timeline. And I've also found some information that is on the internet. But what I've been finding lately is a lot of this information is being scrubbed right off of the internet. A lot of incomplete information. However, we did find pretty much what we need. Mm-hmm. Did we not, Doctor? We found some information.
Oh, yes. We did. Indeed.
Well, I'll tell you what, Doc, you may need to speak up just a little bit into your microphone so everybody can hear you.
And, can you hear me fine
yeah.
now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Hold on one second. Just going to refresh my screen here real quick. And well, hold on, ladies and gentlemen. I'm right now. I'm working like 3 different computers right now, and I want to bring up the live chat. That's what I want to do. I want to get my moderators set up. I see my man DJNC in there. I got to give him a wrench real quick. My lady Tanis, we're going to give her a wrench. I think that's all we need for right now. Okay. Listen, folks, real quick, over the course of the last year, all I've been dealing with is just, I'll just call it the opposition. And you all know that. You hear me ranting about it all of the time. But it is a very serious situation. It is a very serious situation. I had some idiot today file a copyright strike on me, claiming to be the Weather Channel, but their email address that they submitted the copyright strike to YouTube was under the email address hendog62 hendog62@gmail.com. Hendog62@gmail.com. Okay. Now, basically, they copied my video, got a URL once they uploaded it to their YouTube channel, and YouTube accepted the copyright strike under that Gmail account. Well, we all know, and I've already proved it to YouTube, that this was a fraudulent claim, because everybody who works at the Weather Channel has their own email address, which ends in theweatherchannel.com. So, you know, they're fixing this copyright strike in order to take it down. But what I've noticed, ladies and gentlemen, over the course of, you know, like the last 3, 4, 5 months, they've really hammered the Nibiru channel and the Planet X News channel. They have it censored so bad around the world that, I mean, we really can't get to people to bring them this information. So, you know, I've had this channel sitting on the back burner, probably for 4 or 5 months. I'm not stupid. Now, the information that the doctor delved into was something that I was, you know, getting into almost a year ago. You know, I got sidetracked with everything happening, but the timeline of events is what we really have to pay attention to, because all of those people out there that think they can debunk Planet X, all they're doing is playing around with video information that's up on YouTube. Okay, the bottom line is, folks, there is some really, really clear, crystal clear information going back all the way to the late 70s, maybe even earlier than that, but we can't find it. So I'm going to turn things over straight up right to the doctor. And I want, Doc, if you could just give them a quick rundown of what you've gotten into, and then we'll get into your report. I'll pull it up. So the stage is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. Well, basically what I found was in the early 1980s, there were a lot of talk about looking for Planet X due to perturbations in the orbits of Neptune and Uranus. Okay, so, but you brought up my my article, and why I started on this was there was this image on August 20th in the Lascaux C2, and as you can see, there's an object there. The blue arrow points to it. When you take a closer look at that object, it looks like something we've seen before, and that's what's called the planet of the crossing. And so when we look at that, I thought, oh my goodness, but that's what people were saying that was Planet X, and so on. So this is what got me started looking at it. But as you can see, the image, there are other objects. So there's two types of objects. I looked at it and I thought, well, there are these objects, which are indicated by the yellow arrow close to the sun. And now there's this object. It looks like a star with several planets around it, and it makes a cross pattern. So I started looking into it, and as I mentioned before, in the early 1980s, there were some reports coming out in newspaper articles talking about the perturbations in the orbits of Neptune and Uranus, and people thought it could be two things. So if we scroll down a little bit, I talk about that. It could either be, and here we see what people have been talking about. It's the planet of the crossing. Apparently, the word Nibiru means the planet of the crossing. And Zechariah Sitchin did a lot of research in the historical documents he could find about this. Apparently, it's a star with several objects that has a 3,600 year period. And so we can see that what we see in the LASCO C2 image is very similar to this. So it's possibly the same thing. But we also have these stellar remnants in these images, and that we've been studying those and mainly concentrating on those until now. So this is when I started looking at this So scroll down a little bit more. So we have these white brown dwarf stars. This is the close-up to that part close to the occulter. We can see these objects. And we know they are congregating close to the sun. And these are basically old stars. I now call them stellar remnants. And they are congregating around the sun and so on. So I started wondering if we have two types of objects. Because apparently the planet of the crossing was what Dr. Robert Harrington was looking for and found, and possibly led to his death, because it wanted to be the powers that be didn't want it to be publicized and so on. But so I went back and I looked at the history, and if you scroll down a little bit more, you can see where it started. So it started with, in 1982, this Dr. Allen Hynek. He wrote an article that appeared in the November 1982 Science Digest. And there he mentioned that perturbations in the orbits of Neptune and Uranus could be caused by either a planetary object at 4 to 7 billion miles. So that's equivalent to 43 to 75 AU, where AU is the distance between the sun and the Earth. Or it could be a brown dwarf at a distance of 50 billion miles, which is equivalent to 538 AU.
Okay, hey, Doc, real quick.
Yes.
I just want to step back because I don't want to go too fast for everybody.
Yeah.
So listen, folks, real quick. There's information going back as early as the late 1970s that NASA was out there looking for something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but the earliest mentions of this are coming from this Dr. Allen Hynek back in 1982. The doctor's explaining to you what was published in the November 1982 Science Digest. Okay, they mentioned what was happening with Neptune and Uranus. So, folks, the point I'm trying to make, and the point the doctor's trying to make, and the reason for this report and this article is to show you beyond a shadow of a doubt that the boys in blue knew there was something there because they were searching for it in the late 1970s.
Yes. I think this is why they launched the Pioneer 10 and 11. I think they already knew that there was something going on, because they started working on infrared telescopes in the 1970s. They were placing them in airplanes that were flying in the upper atmosphere. The UK built an infrared telescope in Hawaii. I think it started functioning in 1975.
Now, real quick, Doc, real quick, let me ask you some questions here. I know you're hopped up on that espresso I gave you. But listen, ladies and gentlemen, listen to me very carefully. And doctor, answer this question. Why do you think all of a sudden the boys in blue wanted to start playing around with building infrared telescopes to put into outer space?
Yeah, that's right. They must have figured out that something was coming into the solar system. Don't forget that I've come across information that the sun's magnetic field started changing 100 years ago or more. So that's an indication that these objects, and I mean the brown dwarf stars, started coming into the solar system then. And these objects, of course, are only visible in infrared. They don't emit visible light. So they must have figured out something was going on, and they started pushing to have an infrared telescope in orbit. I think in 1979, they started promoting the idea of placing an infrared telescope in the space shuttle.
So, Doc, let me ask you something. So the point I was trying to make is the boys in blue, they knew
yes,
they weren't going to be able to see these objects with a conventional telescope, no matter how big and bad it was.
That's
they
right.
needed to build a massive infrared telescope, and they needed to send that out into a direct area, a very distinct area of space, correct? Now, you just wouldn't just launch a $1 billion space telescope anywhere, would you? You would want to pinpoint where you're sending it. Am I correct?
That's right. I think they wanted to find possibly how many of these objects were coming in and where from. But I think they had already figured out that there was something out there. They must have found something. They then decided they wanted to put something in orbit, obviously, because the ones on the surface were not giving them the information they needed. So there was this big push to build infrared telescopes. And as I said, in 1979, they put in a proposal to put these things on the space shuttle. But it would take too long to get it functioning. So then they decided on the IRAS satellite. And that one, I know they were building it already in 1981. Because there was something built by the UK. I think it was the focal points, part of the focal point device in it. And that went on it in 1981. So in 1981, they were already building the IRAS. And even though they had decided to go with the shuttle, it would only be ready in 1990. So they're obviously in a hurry to get an infrared telescope in orbit. So they went with the IRAS satellite. And so that was launched in January of 1983. And immediately they did a scan of the northern sky. And then they published the fact that they had found something. And I think if you scroll down the other way a little bit, you went a little bit too far. It's very important what they said about it at the end of 1983, because it clearly says that they had found the object. And the object they found was the brown dwarf. So it was the second choice. Yeah. So, so the infrared satellite scanned the northern sky. That was very clear in the article, from January to November. And it scanned the sky for 6 months. And we are told that it found something in the constellation of Orion. And this mystery body had not moved from that spot in 6 months. So they had found the object. It was very clear.
And what did they name it?
Okay, so as you can see, it says, it's so cold it casts no light. So it didn't emit visible light. So that's another characteristic of brown dwarfs. In other parts, they call it a dead star. And then another article said that it was 50 billion. They first said it was 50 trillion miles, but then they corrected to 50 billion. So that's the 538 AU. So that's 5 times further than the edge of our solar system. That's where they said they had found it. They then classified it as a red dwarf. In other words, as a star. and they named it M6V11825. Then shortly after that, it was deleted from the official astronomical record without any explanation, and they never mentioned it again, nor did they mention this discovery again.
So we're talking about a blackout right there. Boom, information gone, scrubbed,
Yes.
Secret, all that crap. Conspiracy,
right.
Here we come.
Yeah, so I think what happened in the beginning was out in the open because they thought it would never pose any danger to us. But the moment they figured out that there was danger to the planet, to our planet, they decided not to let the Earth's population know about it. So that's when they never mentioned it again, and they started trying to hide the fact that these objects were out there. I don't know how many they found. Initially, they obviously found just one. Possibly they found more. We don't know. I think they realized shortly after that there was probably more than one. As you know, we have many of them now close to the sun. And obviously these objects came from outside the solar system because this first one was at 538 AU. We can also see they come from outside the solar system because of the way they behave. They don't behave like the objects that belong in the solar system, where their motions can be modeled by the gravitational model. These objects behave very differently. And from them, we realize that it's mainly the magnetic interaction that they are obeying.
Okay, somebody had a question real quick.
Yes.
How many miles is an astronomical unit or an AU? It's equivalent to our distance from the Earth to the Sun, which is 93 million miles approximately.
That's right.
So that's an AU, 93 million miles. Mm-hmm. So, Doctor, this is the same research that I started getting into. I would have to say probably in the late 90s, around 1998, 99. I was digging up some of this information, but it was very hard to get to because the internet wasn't what it is now. Mm-hmm. Like everything is indexed. But these internet providers, search engines, browsers, they have the ability to scrub things mm-hmm. right from your view, man. I mean, you really got to go out there and try to find it.
Yes.
So here's the bottom line, folks. Real quick, let's just brief everybody on what's happening here. These NASA scientists, they already knew, possibly in the early 70s, mid 70s, but by the late 70s, they were already out there looking for this object or objects. Mm-hmm. Okay, now by the early 80s, they were already putting, big infrared space telescopes up there in space, but to a specific region. Folks, here's the deal. You just don't go launch money like that into any area of space. You're going to have a pinpointed direction for this space probe, this space telescope to go towards. So that right there is telling you they had an idea where this object or these objects were. That's why they launched in that direction towards Orion. Now, we've heard that before. We've heard about that constellation before. But I'm telling you, folks, this story is going to get really, really possibly confused. God, I'm so excited. I apologize. It may get confusing to you at times, but please listen very carefully. The timeline that we're going to give you, and it's going to lead to a point where you're going to fully understand. Like the doctor said before, this is the biggest cover-up in mankind, in world history. And the boys in blue, well, they were the ones that started it because they mm-hmm. knew something was there. And then later on, they committed murder over it. They murdered someone over this. We're not playing games here anymore, folks. It's just not some freaking YouTube video. This is serious stuff. So we're going to get back to our timeline here, but I want you guys to listen very carefully. Try to soak it up. You may have to go back to this live stream and rewatch it. But anyways, Doc, where you were, they went ahead and they named this object.
Mm-hmm.
They named it M6V11825.
That's right. And notice that as I have been talking about these objects from the beginning, I always call them old stars. And you can see from the beginning that that's what they were referring to. They referred to it as a dead star. They referred to it as a red dwarf, which is a star as well. And they said it did not emit visible light. They used infrared radiation to look for it. So this was not an object that was visible. This was a star, not a substellar object. Notice they referred to it in terms that meant it was a star, a dead star that did not emit visible light. And that was correct then, but now they are referring to all these objects as substellar objects. But
okay,
in the
Doc,
beginning,
let me go back real quick here.
Yeah.
So they actually were throwing out names that they were giving these objects. So if you're going to give something a name, which that would have to mean that you saw it.
Exactly. They definitely saw it. They found it.
So the first name was the Dead Star.
Yeah.
Because they thought it was a burnt out dead star, but they were probably sadly mistaken once more data came in, correct?
Yes. What happens is these are so-called dead stars. What they didn't know is that they can rejuvenate. That's why they came towards the sun and started rejuvenating. They didn't know that. So it wasn't completely dead. So here's the one that you photographed yourself. This is the blue brown dwarf star, or what, as I call them, a stellar remnant. And they come right up to the sun. They exchange plasma with the sun. They gain some plasma. And they rejuvenate and start emitting light, working like a star once again. So this is what, these are the objects that they found then. And I don't know how many were in the solar system by then, but it could be they were in the solar system and still approaching the sun. Or they were around the sun already, but not emitting any visible light. So, you know, they were not visible.
Okay,
but
let's shift gears here. So now we know that NASA was already up there.
Mm-hmm.
We know that they had been searching for these objects.
Yes. Because
now we're going to get into Dr. Robert Harrington.
That's right.
And this is very important, folks. So again, pay very close attention. By the early 1980s, Dr. Robert Harrington was the chief astronomer for the Naval Observatory,
mm-hmm.
okay, government installation. But there's an interview with Dr. Robert Harrington and Zecharia Sitchin, the man that you probably all heard about, who wrote the book and did his translations of the Sumerian tablets, and therefore we come up with the name Nibiru, Planet of the Crossing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and these two men, they met up with each other much, much later than where we're at in our timeline in the early 1980s.
Yeah. So don't forget they decided to hide the fact that these objects were coming into the solar system shortly after they announced the discovery in 1983. However, NASA, remember this was NASA, published the results from a study conducted by Dr. Robert Harrington in the late 1980s. So NASA was actually promoting this. And this is out of character of them to promote anything like this. So I actually think they meant this to be a decoy, a sort of, let people know that maybe Planet X had not been discovered yet and we're still looking at it. So they actually published the results from the study that Dr. Robert Harrington had done of the sky, because he decided to still look at the perturbations of Neptune and Uranus and look for a planet. So, and NASA was happy with that, because I think they didn't think that he would find anything. So, they just wanted to distract people from the truth now. But then he had this interview with Zecharia Sitchin in August 30th, 1990. And I think then he started learning about the history of the planet of the crossing from Zecharia Sitchin. And he then, after that, and this was in 1991, he went to New Zealand with a little telescope. Don't forget, this is a normal telescope. That means he can only pick up objects that emit visible light. And apparently, he then found something. What he found was the planet of the crossing. And so soon after that, even before he could come back to the US, he was basically killed. He got cancer, very fast growing. It was very suspicious because he'd just done a physical and he was very healthy. And then suddenly he gets this fast growing cancer and he dies.
Okay, now let's just stop right there real quick, because I want everybody to catch up with what we're saying here, ladies and gentlemen. So let's put this together. In the late 1970s, early 80s, NASA was on to something out near the Orion constellation. They knew something was there. They built a huge infrared telescope. They blasted off. They retrieved data. They got information. And then Dr. Robert Harrington comes along. He meets with Zecharia Sitchin. They do this videotaped sit-down interview. And in the beginning of this interview, Robert Harrington says to Zecharia Sitchin, "We've been looking for these objects since the mid-1970s. He clearly states that. And then they roll out some big papers and they start looking at these orbital paths and then comparing these orbital paths with each other. And then, after Dr. Harrington delves into the information from Zecharia Sitchin and probably putting together some biblical events, decides to go south.
Mm-hmm.
South all the way to New Zealand, where he knew he would be able to get a good view, possibly, of what he was looking for.
Yeah.
He did not take an infrared telescope. He took his own telescope, an 8-inch telescope. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Harrington stayed in New Zealand, made his observations, wrote out an official report, came back from New Zealand, and he delivered that report to the United States government. And soon after that, by the end of January in 1993, am I correct, Doctor? He was laying
That's right.
He was laying in a casket. Okay, he was dead.
That's right. He died in January, I think it was January 30th, 1983.
January 24th.
Oh, January 24th, yes. Okay. Yeah. So it seems that he was killed. But don't forget, as I said in the beginning, NASA was the one that first published his first study. So if they published the study, I don't think they thought that he would find anything. I think they meant it as a distraction from what they had already found in the early 1980s. And as I said before, they were looking for it from the early 1970s. That's why they launched the Pioneer 10 and 11 probes, because they used those probes as well to look for the objects. And they were mentioned when several people wrote about, Dr. Hynek, I think was the first one. He mentioned the probes, these probes, the Pioneer 10 and 11, as looking for these objects and to figure out whether it was the planet that was close or if it was the brown dwarf. Now, it seems that they found the brown dwarf first in the 1980s. They never thought they would find the planets. But then Dr. Harrington found the planets as well. So it seems that the two objects were there. But don't forget that they made a study, a survey of the northern sky with the IRIS satellite. And Dr. Harrington went south because he thought this object was coming from the south, and it was at an angle of 30 degrees to the ecliptic. And he also knew from Zecharia Sitchin that it had a period of around 3,600 years.
But then Dr. Harrington, he revised that mathematics, and he brought that 3,600 year orbit down to just a little over 1,000 years, correct?
That's right, yes. He did. I think that was in his paper. He said 1,000 years, or it could be more. But yes, that's what he had in one of the papers. Well, his later papers we don't have. Apparently, they've been sealed.
Yes, yes. Those. Listen, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, Freedom of Information Act coming to anything related to Dr. Harrington's papers. Those files are top secret. You cannot touch them. Mm-hmm. The fact of the matter is, this man he was a very, very smart man. He went down to New Zealand and he thought that there was some credible information on what Zecharia Sitchin had wrote about in his book. Mm-hmm. And they met and they discussed all of this. It's on video, not the whole entire interview, but, the beginning meeting stages of it.
Yeah.
And, Zecharia Sitchin wrote a book, and I'm sure Dr. Robert Harrington read that book, and then he went in search of, and this was the chief astronomer, U.S. Naval Observatory. Okay, you don't just get that job out of nowhere. You just don't apply for it and they give it to you. This was a very, very smart, intelligent man. He wasn't a fool. This discovery that he made, it ended up costing him his life. I saw somebody in the chat mention that, he died of natural causes due to esophageal cancer. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, you're not going to have, I've already looked this up, you're not going to have esophageal cancer and walk around and not know about it, especially when you are being examined and getting complete physicals by a U.S. Navy doctor. Okay, they're going to detect it. There is no information out there at all about Dr. Robert Harrington being diagnosed with the esophageal cancer, going to the doctors, maintaining his job, going down to New Zealand, coming back, and then on January 24th, he's in a casket. Cause of death, esophageal cancer. So you're meaning to tell me that this man was walking around, conversing with others, speaking clearly with terminal esophageal cancer that took his life, boom, just like that. I'm not buying it. I did my research on esophageal cancer. You're going to know when you have it. You're going to know when it's extreme, and you're going to know when it's about to take your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right, Scott, because normal cancer is slow growing. It takes 25, 30 years for it to grow into a tumor that can be felt and seen. So for him to suddenly develop cancer and to be so extremely fast growing is just not normal. So it had to be some kind of device, or apparently cancer, it can be caused by a virus. So it could be it was infected by one of these viruses that create this fast-growing cancer.
Now,
So,
Doctor, something that's just hitting home to me,
mm-hmm.
ladies and gentlemen, if all of you remember President Ronald Reagan, a lot of what was happening around this time frame, it all surrounds the induction of the Star Wars program put together under the administration of Ronald Reagan. The Star Wars program, mm-hmm. which, we only know what they tell us, what this program was all about. But what really, really gets me is what was in that report that Harrington delivered to the United States government and NASA. Mm-hmm. What was in that report? And I think from that point on, all hell broke loose.
Yeah.
I think they confirmed his information. He was probably the only one privy to his findings. And they thought, well, you know what? We better cut the head of this dog off right now.
Yeah.
We better backtrack and silence anybody who knows anything about what this man wrote in this report. Mm-hmm. The report was confidential.
Yeah.
And from that point on, in 1993, that's where the big, deep cover-up started. Mm-hmm. The whole entire disinformation. Folks, the Washington Post, there's that whole story about the Washington Post posting this article about this object, and then all of it being retracted. Mm-hmm. There were articles in popular science magazines. There was information floating around in magazines all over the place. And then they tried scrubbing it, getting rid of it, breaking it down, discrediting everything. So that's why me and the doctor decided to just stop what we were doing. And we got to start over, because I think there's something there.
Yeah.
And she agreed. She really hasn't gone that deep into all of this information in her research. But I prompted her. I said, listen, we got to go back here, and you have to see what they were doing. Mm-hmm. If you can see what they're doing, then maybe we can piece this together to show everyone how long ago this cover-up started. And this wasn't something that was just going to occur in maybe 5 years from now. No, this was like a 35 to 50 years down the road. We were going to be facing that. Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? That time has come to pass. And doctor, where are we?
Yes, well, that's a good question, Scott, because as we know, we have the brown dwarfs here in large numbers. Okay, the brown dwarfs come from outside the solar system. But the object that Dr. Harrington found is different. First of all, it emits visible light. It seems to be a star, a small planetary system, actually, a star and several planets. But what it does is it obeys the gravitational model. And that suggests to me immediately that this object is actually part of the solar system. In other words, it is actually, our planetary system is binary, and it contains two stars, the sun and this other star. And this other star orbits into our part of the solar system every 3,600 years. And the fact that it orbits and obeys the gravitational model tells me immediately that it's part of the solar system, because that's how we figured out all our gravitational modeling. Anything inside the solar system will behave in this way. So what it tells us, first of all, is that this is our sun's binary twin that comes in through the inner solar system about every 3,600 years. However, the other objects, the brown dwarf stars or the stellar remnants, they come from outside. They don't obey the gravitational model. And they show us that it's not actually gravitation that's causing interactions between bodies. Because it's actually the magnetic force. And even what we have in the solar system is the action of the sun's magnetic field on the rest of the planets, and including on its binary twin, that then can be modeled with the gravitational interaction. So this is what I've thought about. But don't forget, this object emits visible light. It's not a brown dwarf. It is possibly just a small, faint star, and it has some planets around it. And it was known to the ancients. It is talked about in ancient writings. So it's been through the inner solar system before. So we kind of know what happens each time. And why they decided to cover it up is because it does pose dangers to our planet. Apparently, one of the planets comes very close to our planet each time this crossing occurs. And that can cause several disasters and cataclysms on our planet, possibly associated with the flood that happened maybe in the last 3,600 years, 3,600 years ago. So it is associated to disasters, and this is why they decided to cover it up. The brown dwarf stars are also impacting our planet. They are basically destroying the sun right now. They're causing the sun to become unstable. We're having extreme pressure on our magnetosphere. And so the planets in the solar system have heated up because of these objects. Our planet is heating up from the bottom. We have more and more earthquakes, more and more volcanic activity. And then, so we have two dangers, basically. We have the brown dwarf stars that have come in, possibly, I think, for the first time. We've never seen anything like it. And then we have the planet of the crossing that keeps coming repeatedly every 3,600 years. It's been here before. It's coming in now as well. So we have two threats to our existence right now in the inner solar system. And they decided to hide them both from the Earth's population. But we have to realize there are two, and they're right here, right now.
You know, absolutely incredible research, Doctor. I mean, this is some of the same research that I was getting into, you know, in the late 1990s, and just, you know, kept on hitting dead ends, and, you know, and also had a full career going at the same time. But the fact of the matter is, folks, you know, I kind of got, you know, sidetracked with a lot of the information and discoveries and the light that the doctor was shedding on these brown dwarf stars. You know, and I kind of moved away from the nemesis theory, because I wasn't finding, you know, a bunch of credible information on it. But that's because I stopped looking. I stopped looking. And then just the other day, I was discussing, Dr. Robert Harrington, the word Nibiru. I was discussing all of this to explain some things to the doctor because, she really didn't go back into the whole history with Zecharia Sitchin and Nibiru and Harrington. And then whenever we started to probe and dig into this information together and started putting it together, she was able to clearly see with, all of the information that she was digging for, she was able to put together this timeline of what they were doing. Okay, they were already looking for these objects in the mid-70s to about 1979. Robert Harrington states that in his interview with Zecharia Sitchin. And then Zecharia Sitchin is telling him basically, hey, listen, I've spent many years researching and translating these Sumerian tablets and doing some biblical research and blah, 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 blah. This is the book I wrote. This is the information I have. This is the orbital path that, I drew up, whatever. And, Zecharia Sitchin was an author, okay? He wasn't an astronomer or anything of that nature. So I think that Harrington corrected the orbital path with his mathematics and his knowledge and broke it down to about, I think it was a little over 1,000 years, 1,090. I'm not real clear on that, but it's about 1,000 years in the orbital path that he calculated. And then the man went down to New Zealand with his own telescope and he made the observations, and he was there for some time. Okay, so while NASA was looking out near Orion and finding objects that were incoming, Harrington had gone down to New Zealand, and now there's a huge possibility that what he actually found and proved was coming in was this Nemesis solar system, which contains the planet of the crossing, Nibiru. Now, everybody says that, the whole Nibiru thing is a complete fraud. It's a complete lie. There's no evidence of it. It's been debunked 1,000 times. But ladies and gentlemen, that's all part of the whole disinformation. Why were these scientists looking in one direction and finding these things and then covering it up? And then Harrington comes back and files this critical report that ended his life. It ended his life. I don't care what anybody says. He was the link to the information. You come on, what happens. They had no choice, I guess, but to silence him and silence the information. He had a wife, he had a sister, and he had 2 daughters. Now, he would probably be about what, Doc? About 84 years old now, somewhere around there?
Yes, I think it would be 84 now. He was 50 at the time in 1993. Yeah.
Now, something that I've searched for, and check this out. You think that maybe, okay, his wife, she probably knew about this. She, as time went on, he had 2 daughters, he had a sister, but not one of them, none of them have ever come forward to write a book, publicize information, or even talk about their father. He hasn't even been recognized in any way for being the chief naval astronomer for the United States government.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for this subject matter, folks, they would have wiped him off the face of the earth if they had to, but they couldn't. Because people started looking into the information. They started writing about it. Not just last year, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Why do you think that amateur astronomers or even professional astronomers the most won't touch this subject. Number one, it will ruin their career. But number two, which probably should be number one, it may threaten their life.
Mm-hmm.
You already see what it has done to Dr. Albers
Mm-hmm.
and her 17-year career teaching as a professional physicist and professor. 17 years, right down the drain, because they wanted to shut her up and silence her. Yeah. Doctor, this last paragraph that we have up here, why don't we go ahead and run through this real quick?
Yes, as I mentioned before, they sent out the Pioneer 10 and 11 probes, and they started building the IRIS satellite. I think definitely the Pioneers were launched in the early 1970s. So I think from possibly the late 1960s, they already knew there was something out there that they needed to look into. And then they started building infrared telescopes, and then eventually they started building the satellite, the IRIS. And I think they started that in the late 1970s, and then they managed to launch it in early 1983. So basically, they knew something was going on. And as I said before, the sun's magnetic field started changing about 100 years ago. So they had found something, and they were looking for it. They wanted to know what was there, possibly how many they were. They never told us how many. They only mentioned one, but that was enough. We know there are many because we have many around the sun now. I think they didn't know. They thought either it was a brown dwarf or planets. They possibly thought it was a brown dwarf. That's why they built the infrared telescopes. They never thought that there was anything else until Dr. Harrington found it. And only after that, they decided to shut that up as well, because that was also a threat to Earth. They do not want any information about any object that poses any threat to the Earth to be publicized. They don't want the public to panic, basically. So the fact that they actually killed Dr. Harrington shows you that he found something. And, you know, that's the best evidence we have that it is true. They did find it. And, you know, they decided to silence all of this. So this is why they discredit anybody who starts talking about this. This is why there's a whole troll program around this. Anybody that goes into the public media, be it through YouTube, Facebook, or what else, and starts talking about this is somehow attacked. Like you are, like I was. And as you know, it did end my career as well but I didn't look at the history of all of this from the beginning. All I saw, as you mentioned, was I saw the sky. I saw the sky was not right. And that's what started me on my research. And I've just been using observations. I never looked at the history until now. And here we have another picture of the planet of the crossing. It's a star. As you can see, it's a red star with several planets around it. They make a pattern of a cross. And it's interesting that in the Bible, I think it talks about in the end times that the sign of the Son of Man would appear in the sky. Now, the sign of the Son of Man is a cross. And we have this system is in the shape of a cross. So, I think there may be a connection there.
Oh, there's most definitely a connection. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, over the course of the last, well, let's say 6 months, you know, delving into and paying attention to, you know, what's been happening around our globe, and that's a lot of what I've been doing. You know, paying attention to this earthquake situation and the volcanic situation, and the complete wild weather chaos, which we're now seeing brewing heavily in the Gulf of Mexico, threatening a lot of lives in Texas and Louisiana. I've been spending a lot of time watching the sun and making huge discoveries. All the meantime, I basically lost touch with my roots on this subject matter. And that is, once again, going back to the beginning and tracing things as far back as we can. And now doing that with Dr. Albers has now shed even more light on what we know. The boys in blue were already sending out probes and satellites and big infrared telescopes in a very specific region of space. And then Harrington, with the information that came from Zecharia Sitchin in his book, delved into it and made another huge discovery in astronomy. But the powers that be, well, they felt that that was just an absolute threat to national security. It had to be just national security at that time. And then they probably, brought in some of the, superpowers, at some point in time. We'll never know the background on any of that. But I'm very sure that as time went on, other countries made this same discovery as information leaked out. So therefore, they joined in. They said, hey, listen, red, white, and blue, we know what you know. So like I could see all of this international blackmailing going on between countries revolving around this information because, ladies and gentlemen, they would have to compare notes and compare information. They would literally have to blackmail each other. A wants to know what B has. B wants to know what A has as far as the information goes. It's all about knowledge, folks. I keep telling you that. The more we know, the more powerful we are. Well, the same went for those guys. The more information they had, the more powerful they were. And we see how powerful they have become. They knew about this. They know about it now. And then after Dr. Harrington died, we were able to trace back. That's when the big push came to start to discredit the writings of Zecharia Sitchin and his book. And this is how the inner workings are conducted. But people were latching on to it. And also, later on, as time went on, astronomers were delving into this, and a lot of them wanted to make public statements, and they ended up dead. I think about 126 of them to count up to date.
Yeah.
It's a big threat, ladies and gentlemen, but we're gonna get into more of this. So all of you guys have to definitely stay tuned and pay attention, because you know what? As soon as I announced this morning during the Hurricane Harvey update live stream that I did on the Nibiru channel, I mentioned this, and immediately, boom, 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 the bombs started dropping on the Nibiru channel. I mean, freaking left and right. because I think they knew what we were going to get into. Well, I did say what we were. Yeah. There may be only a few hundred of you floating around in here, but listen, I'm going to tell you something right now. You get the word out about this new channel, and the reason why we threw this channel up there, and they're going to be all over this like white on rice. Okay, but you know, they were crushing the Nibiru channel with just censoring everything worldwide, man. Why would they do that? I'll tell you why, because I mean, we are the #1 pain in the rear end with these folks right now. Not the other channels. We're the one really scratching at the bottom and scratching at the surface and trying to make sense of it and trying to make these discoveries to prove what's happening. So you share this video, you get it out there on Facebook. You guys have to help us. We can't do all of it on our own. We need the numbers. The numbers are our power against you know who. We got to do what we got to do, man. You know, what the doctor delved into and what she found, Doc, you did a absolutely fantastic job with, you know, researching and digging into this information.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. It helped to talk to you. You're actually very knowledgeable about this as well. And as you know, I actually didn't know anything about this. I've basically been using observations to look into it. And I was very surprised to find that, and no one has talked about this before, that the two systems, the two types of objects are actually here in the solar system. It's very surprising. It's not just the brown dwarfs. It's not just the planet of the crossing. It's both. So this, for me, was quite fascinating. So
yeah, it is fascinating. I want to see real quick if I have the picture in my one computer over here that was just taken on the LASCO SOHO C2 coronagraph. Give me 1 second. I want to share that with everybody. Okay. I do have them in this one computer. So hold on, everybody. I'm going to show you what one of our subscribers, what he located. Doc, when was this captured? August, was it August 20th?
yes, August 20th. That's right. The LASCO C2 image.
Okay. Here's one image that's going to be up on your screen, folks. And then I'm going to shift to the C2 image. I want you to pay very, very close attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the photograph that you're seeing in red, this was sent in by someone that's in a group with myself and Prep Aussie and a lot of us doing observations and sharing the information like we should. If you pay very close attention to what was captured on the SOHO C2 coronagraph, this is a blown up version. This was almost missed, almost looked over. And if you remember the photograph, let me just see if I could, if I have it real quick. Where is that? The planet of the crossing. Yeah, there it is. Okay, I have a picture of the planet of the crossing up there now. I want you to take a good look at it. Take a good look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Now that you see that, now we could start to look at this photograph that was captured on August 20th, 2017 on the C2 coronagraph.
Yeah.
Now, I've enlarged this photograph for you to view. This on the coronagraph, ladies and gentlemen, would have looked like, well, just a couple of little tiny, tiny little dots off in the distance. But it's there.
Yeah. Yeah, but don't forget that the fact that we can see it so close to the sun means that it's now at the ecliptic. And this means that it's here. It's in the inner solar system now. Or it's, yeah, it's very close. It's, I don't know if it has reached perihelion already, the closest distance to the sun. But if it hasn't yet, it will either be going through perihelion soon or has already and is on its way back. And I think it's on its way back that one of the planets crosses Earth's orbit. So I'm not sure exactly when this will happen, but we know that this object is now here, or the sun's binary twin is here in the inner solar system now.
So, ladies and gentlemen, just sorry for all the jumping around here. I'm trying to run several computers at one time right now. What you're looking at there, okay, this was captured on the 20th of August. There you go. I went to HelioViewer to, confirm what I was seeing. And thanks to this gentleman that's in our group, had a very, very keen sense of eye. And he spotted this. And he zoomed in on it. And he took some screenshots and he did his documentation. He did everything the right way. And then he got the information into other people's hands so we could further examine it. Oh boy. Oh boy. And believe it or not, when this gentleman shared the photographs with myself and Prep Aussie and some others, this is what sparked my conversation with the doctor pertaining to Robert Harrington, Zachariah Sitchin, and this old information going back all the way into the late 70s. And then that's when the doctor and I started delving back into this and decided to go back and start from the beginning, because the beginning is going to be critical. And bingo, here we are. Now we're seeing this little formation August 20th, 2017 on the Soho coronagraph. Now, I'm sure the debunkers will have a field day with this. And they're free to say whatever they want to say. Fact of the matter is, we're going to keep on connecting the dots, whether they like it or not.
Yeah.
I don't care if they don't believe in Nibiru or Planet X. I don't care if they don't believe in conspiracies that were conducted back in the late 1970s, 80s, 90s, and up to where we're at right now. I could give a care less about their opinions because they are simply disinformation agents of some kind, low level. So, ladies and gentlemen, you already know what side of the fence that you're on. And I think if each and every one of us continues to dig and dig and dig and make our observations to the day we die, there is so much going on right now in this world that we live in. So much corroborating evidence coming forward every day, and our eyes are wide open. You know, myself and the doctor, we have so much to show you on a daily basis. It's incredible. The doctor has already written, what, close to 30 reports already, just in the last month. And listen, folks, if any of you want to purchase any of her reports for your own reporting on your own YouTube channel, click on the PayPal link. The reports are $10. I think, Doctor, how many do you have up there already? About 28 of them?
This one is number 29. This
29.
one that we're talking about right now.
So there's 29 reports there, folks.
Yes.
29.
Yeah.
I'll get a complete list of those put up on the Planet X News Facebook page. And, you know, you could always drop an email and ask for a list, and would be more than happy to email you that list, and that will be up to date. Getting the word out, folks, that's what we're trying to do. We are raising some eyebrows. There is no doubt about it.
Yes.
They wouldn't try to be, you know, they wouldn't try to bomb my channels and, you know, make all of these threats and the harassment and the stupid videos. Folks, they wouldn't go through all of that if it was just a fairy tale.
Yeah, that's right, Scott. I mean, the fact that they attack us so viciously actually is evidence of the fact that this is truth, because they don't attack lies, they attack the truth. So, I mean, that was why Dr. Harrington was killed, because it was the truth. If he had falsified his observations, and you would probably still be alive. But because he decided to go with the truth, he was killed. The truth is attacked and lies are promoted. That's the way it is. I mean, they only show the world that what we have on these channels is the truth by attacking it as viciously as they do.
Yep, there's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Listen, folks, get this channel out there. All of the other people that you know that, you know, watch the information, give them a link to this YouTube channel. Now, listen, folks, I'm going to continue to upload videos to the Nibiru channel and the Planet X News channel. Okay. The videos will be up there. I'll put them up there, you know, as we make them and things of that nature. But I'm not going to invest a lot of time into these channels, because they have just literally hammered them and censored them so bad. You know, the subscribership over there is vastly reaching 60,000 people, but that number up there is pretty much garbage, because all of those people don't see any of the video information. So it's time for, you know, a fresh start down the road. They'll be hammering this channel soon. So you just have to follow. But you also have to help us, you know, get to the other folks that don't know this is happening. Hey, Bob, listen, you know, I'm going to give you the link to this, the new YouTube channel. Pass it along. The trolls are doing it right now. They're passing this information between them faster than you guys. So beat them to the punch. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you right now, this battle This battle that we're all in is transforming into a war right in front of your eyes. The doctor and I are going to be live streaming from this channel tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning, maybe around 10 a.m. We're going to get into some more information. We're going to keep on picking this thing apart from the beginning. But what we're looking at right now, hey, I'll tell you, you know, this is tying in to all of the information going way back. Way back. Folks, if you are not following the Planet X News Facebook page, get over there, Planet X News 2017. In any of the videos on the Nibiru channel, the direct link for the Facebook page is there. I don't have it up on this under the description box under this video yet. So follow that Planet X News Facebook page. Follow it, follow it, follow it. Because these videos will be shared on that Facebook page as they're processed, as they come up. You got to be very leery about your notifications, not getting them, blah, blah, blah. So like I tell everybody, you know, stay tuned to that Facebook page, because I know a lot of you are on your Facebook constantly. Even if you're not, it's a good source to keep your media getting to you. But we have more information. It's just getting very late. We've, you know, myself and the doctor, we've both been up since, I've been up since about 4 a.m. The doctor's been up since about 6 a.m. And she's been nonstop working on this for the last 2 days. So make sure you stay tuned. Hey, listen, doctor, and you know, any last words for everybody here?
Yes, Scott, thank you. As usual, I'd like to mention that we are going through bad times. The earthquakes, the volcanoes, it's obviously getting worse. The weather patterns. So we know that things are not right or as they should be on Earth. And it possibly is going to get worse. And but we have help. We have help from our Creator. He's always there for us. This is therefore a good time to get to know Him, get close to Him, talk to Him, and get to know Him, because He's our only hope, our only help. Our governments are against us. Our governments would like to see us dead, but our Creator is there for us. So I just would like to encourage everybody to get to know Him at this time.
Absolutely. Wonderful words, wonderful words. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, once this video is done processing, it will be up on the other channels. If you are not subscribed, click the subscribe button. Smash the living hell out of it on your way out the door. Also, click on the share button. Share the video with your friends and your family members on your Facebook, on your Twitter. Get the information out. Set your notifications up for this channel. We're going to be back tomorrow morning around 10 a.m. and we're going to be cutting loose on more of this information. So don't miss it. Do not miss it. I want to thank all of you and the moderators for helping me out. And folks, you know, it's one day at a time. That's all we can do right now. I wish I had a definite timeline on everything. I wish I had my crystal ball, but I don't. So that's why we have to keep digging and digging and digging. And, you know, we move forward a few steps. You know, we get kicked back a little bit. That's life. but we're going to keep on pushing forward, regardless of what people say and regardless of anyone's opinion. We're going to rock and roll. That's the bottom line. Listen, everybody, you have a safe weekend, and we will definitely be back tomorrow morning with our morning show around 10 a.m. Take care, everybody.